All right, guys, here we go. We're going to be out here ground testing this. Again, I have the Jeti radio so you can see it. We're on high rates. I'm just going to show you forward and reverse, and I got all my telemetry, so check this out. Here we go. So we're going forward, make sure all of our surfaces move correct, right? And we're just taxiing around out here in the grass, right? And there we go. Now we're going to flip this thing here.
Reverse throttle.
Here we go. Going backwards. Ah, perfect. This ETC, this ESC telemetry converter from RC Light Systems, guys, check this out. Here we go. We're going to go forward again, and away we go. You can see we got RPM in there. We got consumption of milliamps used, and again, we're going to go right into reverse. Ah, yeah, I love it. And what did you guys think of that? We had an Eflite product that was using an Avian ESC. We're using a Jeti DS12 for guidance. Not only did I have reverse, I had telemetry. Stick around. I'm going to show you how. Are you flying Jeti? Are you flying Powerbox? Are you flying JR? Are you flying Spektrum? Are you flying FR Sky? Frisky, however you want to say it. Do you have a telemetry capable ESC and no way to get it over to your radio? So we're talking about a Castle Creations. We're talking about an Avian, a Scorpion Tribunus. We're also talking about the HobbyWing Platinum V4s or Funfly V5s. This device can help you to do that. Not only will it help you to do that, but for us, a lot of the Eflite products, we have struggled in order to get telemetry over to anything, and there's a cool caveat to this. We have struggled to get any of our telemetry data past anything past a Spektrum radio, NX, DX series, whatever. So you couldn't fly Jeti or JR, Futaba, or anything else with these ESCs without changing them because you couldn't get the data out of them. Well, the other thing was, if you didn't buy into the proprietary battery situation, you also weren't going to get capacity unless you were to put in something like a Jeti MUI current sensor. Well, with this cool product, not only am I going to fly this Draco with that Avian ESC, I'm going to pull the telemetry out of it, but I'm also going to get reverse. And on top of that, the cool part is I'm also going to get my milliamp capacity that I wouldn't have gotten unless I went with a smart battery. So let's start checking out this system. So here's what's going down, folks. We're going to take the Draco. We're going to disconnect that Spektrum receiver on the inside. I'm going to use my Jeti DS12. We're going to throw in a Rex 10 receiver, and this is the bad boy that you've been waiting for. Let me introduce you to, from rclightsystems.com. Check them out, www.rclight, L-I-G-H-T, systems, S-Y-S-T-E-M-S.com, rclightsystems.com. Guys, this is their ETC, or ESC telemetry converter. Inside that nice little package is this cool little box. And this, my friends, is what's going to do all of those things that we talked about. So, some of the things you're going to need. First off, there can be some heavy reading here. I encourage you, go to the website. You're going to go over to rclightsystems.com. You are going to download this nice book and make sure it can do the things that you want it to do. Now, it really depends on the radio and the ESC for the data that it has that will come out of it as to what it's capable of doing. So every one will probably vary a little bit in combination, but I can get everything out of this that I would like. So, again, heavy reading potential here. So print the book. You see mine's a little tattered. I've been reading this thing for a long time. I have myself my replacement receiver so I could fly the system that I want to fly. And I got myself my telemetry converter. With that thing, you're also going to need an X lead. All right. You're going to need the USB bootloader dongle. And we are going to need a male-to-male 3-wire cable. And you can download it right off their website, and I'll show you here on my screen. You're going to need this RC bootloader software. I struggled with mine simply because of my firewalls wouldn't let the program run, so I had to mess around with some settings to be able to shut that off in order to get this stuff to load up. Once it loads up, it's fairly simple, believe it or not. So very good instructions there on the website that you can follow. Also, you can also message and reach out to RC Light Systems. They'll help you out. They also, obviously by name, do some really cool custom lighting systems, and they're going to be having a lot of other things it looks like come up on their website for already pre-made systems and stuff like that. So I encourage you to go check them out. But if you're only going there for this telemetry module, guys, this ETC converter, it's going to be well worth it. So let's go ahead and get started into this project. So let's go ahead and remove all of the needed wiring here. I've already accessed this cover. Let's go ahead and pluck out all of our leads. Now this is in this plane is a 6-channel receiver on the inside here, and then they have one port for binding, and then it looks like possibly serial data goes in there as well, your SRLX data. So now that that's unplugged, these things are usually glued in there for orientation. Obviously with the AS3X, they can't be moving around, so they're usually in there pretty good. We're going to go ahead and remove this. That will no longer be needed, my friends. Now that that thing is out, we're going to go ahead and take our, in this case, we are using a Jeti RX 10 receiver. So this is the receiver that we are going to be using on the inside of this plane. Now we're going to have to configure our radio and set this up the way we want, but we need to configure this to receive ExBus data from this thing. So we are going to take our male-to-male lead, and they have it marked up here for signal, power, and ground. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to put my male-to-male lead there in the top of this thing. Now we're going to go ahead and bind and set up our Jeti receiver. So this thing is simply going to go in there. We're going to plug into our battery port. So that thing's ready to be bound. Turn this thing on and create a model. And I was playing around with a receiver in here earlier. So I am going to now change to this one. And you can see how quickly that bound up, and that's done. Now, the reason I am going with this receiver, originally I wanted to do a 7-channel, and the 7-channel is not going to be enough if you want the reverse, because you need channel 7 to be open in order to have that reverse function. So in this case, we're going to go with a RX 10. If you want to go with a 8-channel receiver or 9-channel receiver, in those cases with this plane, that would be adequate, and that would be enough. So now that I'm in here, we're going to go ahead and go into our function of our radio. And we are going to go into this model. We're going to go into Device Explorer, go into the receiver, go into alternative pin configuration. And as we look down, you can see channel 1, servo, 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 servo. And E1 and E2 are configured. E2 for a servo, E1 for a Jeti box sensor, and then your EXT for Jeti box sensor. So in this case, I'm going to wind up using the E1 port, and the E1 port you want to set to ExBus, because that's what we're going to be using for communication in this place. And then channel 7 is going to be left as a servo for the reversing function, so that's assigned, and that's okay. And now you're going to come into function assignment, and you have to make sure that you create functions for the lights. So I did that for channel 5 right here, so I still have my lighting controller. And then I also created the function for my SC switch, which is going to be right there, and that is going to be labeled for reverse. So from there, we're going to hit OK. And now we can look at servo assignment. So servo 1, throttle, 2 aileron, 3 flap, 4 rudder, 5 is lights, 6 is elevator, and 7 is reverse. So that is how we are going to go ahead and plug in our receiver leads into this plane. All right, guys, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up your ETC, your ESC telemetry converter. So you're going to go to the rcalitesystems.com website. Again, you're going to download that bootloader. When it comes time to update the firmware in this thing and put in your settings, you're going to have to go ahead and go into that bootloader program and you're going to open that up. So it's going to look like this. You're going to take your dongle and you're going to plug in your dongle. All the drivers should update. If not, there's self-help on the website for that if your drivers don't load properly. From here, you should have your communications port. Hopefully you just get the one. We're going to go ahead and if you see here it says please open a port. We're going to go ahead and open that port and it says connect the device. If we connect the device and everything works appropriately, this thing's going to pop up and it's not going to be blinking red. If you look in there, it's actually green in color. So for the Avian, we're actually going to go in and select the firmware for this thing. And it has in there Avian startup fixes. And then you can go ahead and click on their right, which will go ahead and update that. Now also, when you come in here, you can select manage. And now this will pull up the configuration screen. In this configuration screen, you're going to go ahead for the Jeti system and select Jeti XBus, which you can see there's many systems and setups in there to select. And the ESC type we are setting for Spektrum Avian, and you can see the HobbyWing Platinums and Fly Funds that this thing will communicate with. So we have Spektrum Avian. We are using throttle channel number 1 on this. The pole count on the stock Draco motor is a 12, and the main gear teeth and spur teeth is 4 head RPM for helis if you're going to use that. Once everything is good there, we're going to go ahead and lock in that programming. And when we're all said and done with this, you're simply going to come in here and select close. From that point, you can go ahead and actually I'm going to use this male-to-male lead. So we will unplug that there. You can unplug your bootloader and you are done with your PC. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start plugging in everything to our Rex receiver as we're supposed to. So the first thing is I'm going to take this 2-wire and the 2-wire is going to go into port number 1. And I'm not going to be using that 1-wire lead. The next thing is on this one on port number 2, that's going to be my aileron lead. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to find that aileron lead. And for the sake of wiring mess on the inside, we'll try and route this stuff around, make it look a little nicer. So for here, we're going to go ahead and ailerons are port number 2. Port number 3 in this case is going to be flaps. So we're going to go ahead and find my flaps, and they will go in port number 3. Port number 4 is my rudder. This one is lighting control, by the way, just so you guys know. Port number 4 is going to be rudder. Five is going to be lighting control. From there. Now, my ETC ExBus is going to be configured on the E1 port. So this telemetry converter from the USB receiver has got to come over into E1. So we're just going to make sure that that's wired in appropriately. And 6 is going to wind up being my elevator. So 5 is lights, 7 is open, 6 is my elevator, and that is going to be everything installed. But you got to configure on the Rex 7 that E1 wound up being channel number 6. So here on a Rex 10, it's actually E1 is its own thing, E2 is on channel 8 and configurable. So that's where that is going to wind up staying. So channel 1 is the 2-wire plug off the ESC. The 1 wire stays by itself. 2 is aileron. 3 is going to be flap, 4 rudder, 5 lights, 6 elevator, 7 is going to be open. The male to male comes off of the ETC and goes to a configured ExBus port on E1, and the long lead off of the ESC comes into the ETC into the ESC port. Let's fasten it in there. Now guys, our last step along the way, basically to check to make sure everything works. So we will go ahead and set all this up later as far as throws and rates and everything else, but we're going to go ahead and plug in this battery. You'll hear it boot up. And there you go. So there's that, right? We're holding this plane, so now we'll check rotation. So there's forward rotation. Stop, flip the switch. There's backwards rotation. Again, forward. And again, backwards. And as far as the lights go, you're going to see here, we're going to be using this knob. So there's our function, lights there. We can shut off lights there. Turn those back on. Turn those back on. So we have all the same functions that we had with that Spektrum receiver, and now you have it in the system that you want it in. Now, the other cool thing is if you look down here, we also have, in this case, RPM. We have consumption of milliamps, which this saves you from buying a Jeti MUI sensor, but now keep in mind, maybe not quite as accurate. This is a calculation, but guys, it's going to get you close enough, and it's better than using voltage. So we have current draw in here, and if I use double size, I get all my mins and maxes. We're looking at BEC voltage. And this, if you're using pass-through for a BEC from the ESC to your receiver to power it, this thing can handle 5 amps, 10 amps burst, but 5 amps continuous. And then we're also looking at temperatures. So we can look at BEC amperage taken out of this. You can look at BEC temperature. And then, like I said, my big ones for me, I can look at RPM. But also, guys, with black box data, I can actually go through and see if I ever had a failure, because I can look at graphing. I can look and see if I had a BEC voltage drop out. I can look at that graph. It's not ticker tape data. It's always saved in my Jeti radio, and that's why I love this thing. There is no disputing good, accurate telemetry information. The stuff is invaluable, and that is what makes this thing so cool from rclightsystems.com. So again, we have all of our telemetry data. We have our little knob to control our lighting. So as we turn that thing, you can see how we can cycle through the functions. Again, all of our lights, everything else functions just like it would if we were running that Spektrum receiver with that Avian ESC. Lighting is working perfect. Forward and reverse work perfect. All right, guys, kind of a windy day here, playing around with the Draco outside. We're testing the telemetry here on the Jeti DS12 as we're flying this thing with the Avian ESC on board, but we're using the ETC, so it's the ESC telemetry converter from rclightsystems.com, so you guys can see. And what I'm actually doing is I'm flying this pack off of milliamp used and not off of voltage, so it's, if you will, a more accurate way of determining when it's time to land based off your flying style. So if you're flying it more aggressive, your flights are shorter. If they're, you know, taking it easy, then they're going to be longer, but I'm flying off an alarm on this system and not just by a mere voltage or timer. So you actually get more enjoyment, if you will. But again, just showing you how well this ETC system actually works. That's some really cool stuff, guys. Do me a favor, hop on over to www.rclightsystems.com and check out that ETC module, that ESC telemetry converter. Again, if you liked it, smash that thumbs up. It helps the channel out a lot. If you're going to hit the thumbs down, do it twice for me. Like, share, subscribe, and all of that cool stuff. You guys are just plain crazy for watching. I appreciate every one of you. I wish you guys happy flights. Peace out.